Embark on a journey through the pages of Tangled in Your Gravity, spun from the creative threads of StoryWave AI. Like, share, and subscribe to journey with us through Tales Untold. Chapter 1, A Rocky Start. The air crackled with tension, the kind that heralds a storm. I stood at the head of the boardroom, the polished mahogany table gleaming under the weight of expectation. My name, Trent Harper, was synonymous with success in these four walls, but today, the atmosphere was laced with a different charge. Across from me, Rachel Stone, with her raven hair and eyes that flickered like hazel flames, leveled a gaze that could cut glass. Her presence stirred something primal within me, a mix of rivalry and a more dangerous unspoken tension. My proposal is not only viable, it's what this company needs to pivot in this volatile market, she asserted, her voice slicing through the murmurs of the room. I countered, my tone equally unwavering. It's a reckless gamble, Rachel. We can't stake our future on a concept that hasn't been market tested. The room erupted, voices clashing like swords as every executive weighed in, their words a discordant symphony. Rachel's foot tapped an impatient rhythm, the sound a sharp counterpoint to the heated exchange that filled the space between us. As the debate raged on, a murmur spread through the crowd, whispers of downsizing and takeovers. The undercurrent of unease was palpable, a shared fear that clung to the walls and seeped into our very skins. I watched her, Rachel, as she navigated the onslaught with a fierce grace. Her arguments were passionate, her conviction unyielding. Despite myself, despite everything, I felt the unmistakable pull of admiration. It was a sensation as vexing as it was intense. We were fire and ice, Rachel and I, a tempest of wills bound within the confines of this corporate battleground. And as the meeting adjourned with no victor declared, the charged air lingered, a silent acknowledgement of the battle lines drawn. I left the room with the weight of the day heavy on my shoulders, knowing this was just the beginning. The rumors of instability, the clash of our ideals, they were but the opening chords of a symphony I was yet to comprehend. As I walked away, the compass tattoo on my wrist caught the light, a reminder of direction in the midst of chaos. It was a rocky start, indeed, but the gravity of the situation, the gravity of her, was something I would not escape. Chapter 2, Unexpected Revelations. Evening draped the city in a cloak of azure and gold, the fading light casting long shadows across the pavement. I navigated the crowded sidewalk, the day's confrontations with Rachel still ricocheting through my thoughts. The compass on my wrist felt heavier than it had that morning, a silent testament to the direction I lacked. A blare of sounds from a nearby street performer filled the air, a marked difference to the silence that had settled in the office after our heated exchange. Then, in a twist of fate as unpredictable as the market we battled over, I saw her. Rachel, outside of the steel and glass confines of our corporate world, was a revelation. She was dressed down in jeans and a simple t-shirt that did nothing to diminish her commanding presence. Her hair, free from the usual constraints, cascaded over her shoulders like a raven waterfall. Our eyes met, and for a moment I was a ship lost at sea, caught in the pull of her gaze. But then, life's unpredictability struck again. A passerby jostled me, sending my briefcase tumbling, papers spilling like leaves in a gale. Embarrassment flared, but before I could react, Rachel was there, her hands ablur as she gathered my scattered documents. An unexpected kindness from the woman I'd pegged as my rival. "Looks like you could use some help, Trent," she said, a smile playing on her lips. It wasn't mocking, it was genuine. I knelt beside her, our efforts to collect the papers a strangely intimate dance. "Thanks, Rachel. I didn't expect to see you here, or to have you come to my rescue." Our hands brushed, and a current of awareness shot through me. I glanced up at her, trying to decipher the enigma wrapped in kindness before me. "Life is full of surprises," she quipped, handing me the last of my belongings. "And for the record, I'm not always the cutthroat product manager you see in the boardroom." We stood an arm's length apart, but the distance felt irrelevant. "I'm beginning to see that," I admitted, the words leaving a trail of uncertainty in their wake. Rachel's gaze held mine, and in the softening light, the hazel of her eyes seemed like molten metal, warm and captivating. "There's more to me than meets the eye, Trent Harper. Maybe it's time you looked a little closer." Her words hung between us, a challenge and an invitation all at once. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen, her expression shifting. Speaking of surprises, the company retreat's been announced. She arched an eyebrow. A weekend in the wilderness. That should be an interesting change of scenery for us city dwellers. Trepidation and curiosity mingled in my chest. I'm not sure interesting covers what that weekend will be. Rachel laughed, a sound that seemed to dance in the dusk. Well, it's happening, so we might as well make the best of it. As we parted ways, her laughter lingered, an echo that filled the spaces of my mind. The encounter, brief as it was, had shifted something within me. Rachel Stone, my formidable adversary, had shown a facet of herself that was impossible to ignore. I walked on, the compass on my wrist catching the last light of the day. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. My feelings for Rachel were no longer just a matter of winning or losing. They were as tangled as the streets of the city we both called home. Chapter 3: Shared Ground. Dawn broke over the city skyline, a canvas of molten gold spilling between the silhouetted skyscrapers. I sat in the half-light of my office, the upcoming retreat casting a long shadow across my thoughts. Today's preparation session loomed large, and with it, the inevitability of working closely with Rachel. The meeting room was a tableau of corporate efficiency when I arrived, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the tang of marker pens and the rustle of papers. The team bustled with a quiet energy, but all fell still as Rachel entered, her demeanor commanding silence more effectively than any spoken command. As much as I love the idea of trust falls in the great outdoors, she began, her voice smooth and assured, "We need to strategize. This retreat isn't just team building, it's about showing we can unite under pressure." I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table, ready to stake my claim on the leadership role. Agreed, and it's crucial we present a unified front. I have some thoughts on the structure of our activities. A collective breath seemed to be held as we locked gazes, the air charged with our mutual ambition. Yet as we delved into the details, an unexpected harmony emerged between us. Our ideas, though born from different perspectives, began to weave together, forming a tapestry more robust than either of us could have crafted alone. You know, Rachel said, pausing to consider a point I had made about leveraging individual strengths, "I didn't expect you to be so insightful about people, Trent." Her compliment, tentative as it was, bridged a gap I hadn't realized existed. "And I didn't anticipate you'd be open to a more human-focused approach," I replied, allowing a genuine smile to break through my usual reserve. The planning session stretched on, the sun climbing higher in the sky, casting a warm glow that bathed the room in a soft light. Our exchanges, once sharp with competition, now carried a rhythm that felt almost like co-conspirators plotting their course. As we wrapped up, Rachel lingered by the table, stacking papers with precision. "I have to say, Trent, this was more productive than I expected. You might just make a decent co-leader on this trip." The word co-leader hung between us, an indication to the ground we had unknowingly shared. "I could say the same, Rachel. Seems we have more in common than we thought." Her laugh, a rare sound, resonated in the quiet room, and I found myself captivated by the ease of this moment. Our rivalry had softened, giving way to a fledgling respect that felt as solid as the earth beneath our feet. As we left the building together, the city's heartbeat thrumming around us, I realized this retreat might just be the catalyst that would reveal the depth of the gravity between us. With shared interests now laid bare, the path ahead promised a journey neither of us had anticipated, yet both of us needed. Chapter 4: Mountains and Misdemeanors. The mountain air nipped at my skin, a clear-cut difference to the sterile chill of the corporate office. The retreat had finally brought us here, to the cusp of wilderness, where the land rose and fell like the deep breaths of the earth. Trent Harper, the name everyone respected back in the city, seemed inconsequential under the vast expanse of sky. Rachel's stride was confident as we embarked on the hike, her boots crunching against the gravel path that wound through the forest like a serpent. We had started out with a group, but as the trail grew steeper, it was just the two of us, forging ahead. "You know, I used to think this was all nonsense," Rachel confessed, her breath misting in the cool air as we climbed. "Nature retreats, team building in the wild. but there's something raw about it, something real. I glanced at her, surprised by the admission. I had you pegged for an indoors person, given your sharp focus on product details. She chuckled, a sound that seemed to belong to the rustling leaves around us. There's more to me than market analyses and risk assessments, Trent. I grew up hiking these trails. They were my first challenges for boardroom battles. Her revelation made me reconsider her, not just as a colleague, but as someone with layers and history. I can relate to that. I didn't always wear suits and tie knots. My first battles were fought on the soccer fields, believe it or not. The trail twisted before us, an ascending labyrinth that promised aching muscles and sweat-stained shirts. We moved in sync, our earlier competitiveness giving way to mutual reliance as the path demanded our full attention. Then, as if the mountains sought to test us further, the sky darkened, clouds rolling in with a speed that spoke of nature's unbridled will. Within moments, rain lashed against us, horizontal and unyielding. There, Rachel pointed to a structure ahead, a cabin that offered shelter from the tempest. We rushed towards it, the storm's fury urging us on until we stumbled inside, soaked to the bone but safe. The cabin was rustic, a single room with a stone fireplace that stood like a silent guardian. Rachel set to work, her movements efficient as she built a fire from the kindling stacked neatly in a corner. I joined her, and soon we had a blaze crackling, its warmth seeping into our chilled limbs. As the fire cast a golden glow around us, Rachel found an old bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses that had seen better days. To mountains and misdemeanors, she toasted, her smile reflecting the flames. We settled by the fire, the whiskey spreading a comforting warmth as we shared stories of our pasts. Rachel spoke of her childhood, of a family that found solace in nature's embrace after her father's passing. I listened, the tales of her steadfastness painting a portrait of the woman who had become my most formidable challenge. In turn, I spoke of my own struggles, of a youth spent trying to outpace the shadow of a brother who had been everything I was expected to be. With each word, the walls between us crumbled, revealing common ground we never knew we shared. As the night deepened and the storm raged outside our haven, I realized that Rachel and I were not so different. We were 2 sides of the same coin, tossed by fate into a world that demanded strength but found solace in the unpredictable beauty of life's journey. The fire's glow waned to embers, and in the silence I heard Rachel's steady breathing, an earnest to the trust that had grown between us. We had been forced to rely on each other, and in doing so, we had discovered a connection that the confines of our offices could never have contained. The mountain had stripped us of our professional armor, and beneath it we found something raw and real. As sleep finally claimed us, the thought lingered in my mind. Maybe, just maybe, the gravity that pulled us together was more than just a metaphor for the challenges we faced. It was the beginning of an unexpected journey, one that neither of us could have foreseen. Chapter 5, The Heart's Compass. Morning unfurled its light upon the wilderness as I awoke, the remnants of last night's storm lingering in the fresh scent of pine and earth. The cabin, once a refuge in the tempest, now stood as the starting point for the day's journey. Rachel and I had shared revelations by firelight, and now the dawn cast new shadows on the landscape of our evolving rapport. The terrain ahead was a mosaic of greens and browns, a world untouched by the hand of progress. We were to navigate through the dense forest, charting a path back to the main camp. Rachel's eyes, usually so focused and sharp, held a glimmer of something akin to curiosity as we set out. "Keep an eye on the trail markers," she advised, her tone authoritative yet absent of the usual edge. "We need to make sure we're heading in the right direction." I nodded, my gaze catching on the compass tattoo on my wrist. "I've got a pretty good sense of direction, but I'll defer to the expert," I said, a half smile tugging at my lips. The path we chose wound through the underbrush, a serpentine challenge that tested our footing and resolve. Rachel moved with an ease that spoke of her familiarity with the wild, her boots finding purchase where the ground seemed eager to betray. Our conversation flowed naturally, the dialogue punctuated by the sounds of the forest. We talked of past hikes, of trails conquered, and lessons learned in the embrace of nature. Rachel's voice rose and fell, her words painting images of vast landscapes and open skies. Then, without warning, the earth beneath my feet gave way, a hidden divot masked by fallen leaves. I stumbled, a sharp pain lancing through my ankle as I went down. The forest spun, a carousel of green and brown, until Rachel's face appeared above me, concern etching her features. "Trent, talk to me. How bad is it?" Her hands were gentle as she assessed the damage. "Twisted it," I grunted, the pain a white-hot starburst. "I can put weight on it, but it's not going to be a pleasant hike." She took charge, her decisiveness a torch, as she fashioned a makeshift brace from our supplies. "We'll take it slow. I'll lead. You focus on walking. We can't afford to stop." The roles had reversed, Rachel now the one guiding us through the labyrinthine forest. Her encouragement was a lifeline, her presence a steady force that helped me push through the pain. As the hours passed, we found ourselves in a clearing, a brief respite from the relentless challenge of the woods. Rachel's hand found mine, a silent offer of support as we rested. "You're doing great, Trent. We'll make it back before nightfall," she said, her voice softer now, the competitive undercurrent replaced by something else, something akin to care. I looked at her, really looked, and saw more than the product manager, more than the rival. I saw Rachel, a woman of strength and unexpected kindness. "Thank you, Rachel, for taking the lead, for everything." The words felt inadequate, but they were all I had. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows as we continued. Each step was a covenant to our mutual support, our care for one another, growing with the shared challenge. As the camp came into view, a surge of relief washed over me, mingled with a sense of accomplishment. We had navigated more than just the wilderness. We had begun to navigate the complex terrain of our feelings. And as the heart's compass pointed us towards understanding and connection, I realized that our journey was far from over. Chapter 6: Summiting Prejudices. The ascent was grueling, a vertical puzzle of rock and root that demanded every ounce of our strength and focus. Rachel moved with a climber's grace, her footsteps sure and unwavering. I matched her pace, driven by the unspoken challenge that thrummed between us, as palpable as the crisp mountain air. "We're close now," Rachel called back to me, her voice a illuminator as we navigated the final stretch. I grunted in response, my muscles screaming protest, but my spirit soared. We crested the summit, the world unfurling below us like a tapestry woven by the gods. For a moment, all competition fell away, leaving only awe and the shared triumph of our ascent. Rachel's eyes mirrored the sky, a storm of emotions churning with their hazel depths. "Would you look at that?" she breathed, her usual composure swept away by the grandeur before us. Side by side, we stood in silence, the vista a testimony to the insignificance of our daily squabbles. The horizon stretched endless and unbound, a reminder of possibilities yet to be explored. "It's more than I imagined," I found myself saying, the words inadequate to capture the majesty that embraced us. She nodded, her profile etched against the sky, a sculpture of determination and beauty. "It makes you realize, doesn't it? The things we fight over, they're just specks, dust." Her hand brushed mine, a fleeting contact that sent a jolt through my body. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the vulnerability she so rarely showed. "Trent," Rachel's voice was a whisper, carried away by the wind. "Up here, it's easy to see what matters. I just wish." She trailed off, the sentence hanging between us like the clouds that danced around the mountain's peak. "What do you wish?" I prompted, my heart thundering louder than the gusts that buffeted us. Rachel hesitated, then met my gaze with an intensity that rivaled the sun's glare. "I wish I could let go. Just let go of the fear, the need to always come out on top." I reached out, my hand closing around hers, a connection that felt as natural as the earth beneath our feet. "Maybe we can. Together." The word "together" lingered, a promise as vast as the landscape that surrounded us. In that moment, the fear of acknowledging the bond that had been growing between us loomed as large as the mountain itself. Yet, as we descended, the mountain behind us, the path ahead seemed less daunting. With each step, the summit's lessons settled into our bones. The understanding that strength could be found in unity, in the courage to face our fears and the prejudices that had once defined us. As the camp came into view, the mountain's shadow stretched long across the ground, a silent witness to the shift within us. We had reached the peak, and in doing so, we had begun to summit the complexities of our own hearts. The gravity that pulled us together was no longer an opposing force, but the very thing that made our journey worthwhile. Chapter 7, Calm Before the Storm. Our eyes met across the room, a silent acknowledgement of the shared journey that had brought us here. The air was thick with the unvoiced truths that lingered between us, and I found myself navigating the crowd, drawn to her like a ship to a lighthouse. "Trent," she greeted, her voice carrying the weight of our unspoken connection. "You clean up nicely outside of hiking gear." Her attempt at lightness didn't quite reach her eyes, and I offered a smile, feeling the gravity of the moment pulling us closer. "As do you. I hardly recognized you without the trail dust and determination." The band struck up a soft melody, the notes floating through the air, an invitation for those brave enough to embrace the dance. Without a word, I extended my hand, a question poised in the gesture. Rachel hesitated, a flicker of resistance crossing her features before her hand slipped into mine. As we found the rhythm, the world seemed to narrow to the space we shared. Her hand on my shoulder was a whisper of silk, her touch a language all its own. I led, she followed, and for a brief span, our professional rivalry was a distant shore. "The company," Rachel murmured, her words barely audible over the music. "The rumors are getting louder. They say a storm is coming, one that could capsize us all." I drew her closer, the scent of her perfume a sensory echo of the forest we had traversed. "Then we'll weather it together." "We've climbed mountains, Rachel. What's a storm to us?" Her laugh was tinged with vulnerability, the sound a delicate chime amidst the crescendo of strings. "You make it sound so simple, as if we could just dance away the challenge." "Maybe not," I conceded, feeling the thrum of her pulse beneath my fingertips. "But we found common ground where none seemed to exist. That counts for something." The dance ended, but our connection lingered, an electric charge in the space between us. It was the calm before the storm, a respite that offered glimpses of what-ifs and might-bes. As the night wore on, the gala a whirlwind of celebration and farewells, the threat to our company loomed ever larger. Yet beneath it all, Rachel and I moved in an orbit all our own, a dance of possibilities that had only just begun. The night was ours, and in its fleeting embrace we found the courage to face the tempest ahead, together. Chapter 8, Igniting the Spark. Upon reaching my office, Rachel was already there, her silhouette framed against the morning light that spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She turned, her expression taut, a clear signal that the truce we shared in the wilderness was under siege, now that we were back in the urban jungle. "Trent, we need to talk about the Henderson account. It's teetering on the edge, and if we don't act now, it's going to fall through," she stated, her words crisp and laced with urgency. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the company's precarious position. "I'm aware of the situation, Rachel. I've been considering a few strategies that could reinforce our standing." She stepped closer, her hazel eyes alight with a fire that had nothing to do with the morning sun. "Your strategies are too cautious. We don't have time for a gentle nudge. We need to be bold, make a statement." Our gazes locked, the air between us thickening with every word unsaid about the night at the gala, about the uncharted territory we found ourselves skirting. "Boldness without direction is chaos, Rachel. We can't afford to be reckless." Her laugh was sharp, a shard of glass in the stillness of the room. "And since when do you shy away from a little chaos, Trent? Or is that only reserved for mountaintops and moonlit dances?" The reference to our shared moments outside the office stung, a reminder of lines we had yet to navigate. "That's different, and you know it. Here, we have to think about the entire team, the company's future." "Exactly," she retorted, her voice rising in pitch. "And right now, it feels like you're thinking more about playing it safe than doing what's necessary." I bristled at the accusation, the words a spark igniting the tinderbox of tension that had built between us. "Playing it safe? You think I'm not aware of the risks? I've been navigating these waters long before you were." "Before I was what, Trent?" Rachel cut in, her tone challenging, her presence an inch from mine. "Before I was a threat to your control, before you had to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, I'm as good as you are." The air was electric, our breaths mingling, a storm of emotions swirling in the sliver of space that separated us. And then, in a moment of impulsivity that defied logic and reason, Our lips met in a collision of frustration and an undeniable undercurrent of attraction. The kiss was a conflagration, a searing path through the veneer of professionalism that had shielded us. It was a question and an answer, a crossing of lines that we could never redraw. As we parted, the silence was profound, a vacuum where the fire had raged. Our eyes met, the reality of our actions settling like ash around us. The Henderson account, the company's future, our own intertwined fates, they all hung in the balance, suspended in the aftermath of our heated argument and the passion that had flared, unbidden but impossible to ignore. Rachel, I started, the complexity of our situation rendering me uncertain of the next move. This changes everything, she finished, her voice a mere whisper. I know. We stood there, the gravity of our choices, our desires, anchoring us to the spot. The spark had been ignited, and now we were left to navigate the blaze we had set, with both our jobs and hearts perilously close to the flames. Chapter 9. Crossroads of Heart and Duty. I settled into my chair, the leather cold and unyielding, a acute differentiation to the tumultuous sea of emotions swirling within me. The door swung open, and Rachel entered, her composure as perfect as the tailored lines of her suit. Yet there was a tightness around her eyes that spoke volumes to those who knew how to read it. The other board members filed in, their faces etched with concern and speculation. The chairman, a man with a gravity all his own, called the meeting to order with a voice that left no room for dissent. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at a crossroads, he began, his gaze sweeping across the room. Our company faces challenges that could very well dictate our survival. Every decision, every action we take from this point forward must be for the greater good of this organization. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, a wave of collective resolve. Yet beneath it, a current of fear ran deep. It clung to the walls like ivy, impossible to ignore. Rachel's voice cut through the tension. With all due respect, we're more than capable of turning this situation around. We've steered through rough waters before. I watched her, admiration mingling with a dangerous cocktail of other, less professional sentiments. Rachel's right, I found myself saying. We've come back from the brink more than once. We can do it again. The chairman nodded, his eyes lingering on us just a moment too long. Indeed. However, it has come to my attention that there may be distractions that could compromise our efforts. The room stilled, the air suddenly thick with implication. I felt Rachel's gaze on me, a silent conversation passing between us. We were the unspoken subject of his insinuation, our clandestine connection now a scapegoat for corporate fears. I cleared my throat, ready to defend, to shield what we had built from the prying eyes of the board. If there are concerns about focus, I can assure you, it's not just about focus, Trent, another board member interjected. It's about perception, about unity. If there are entanglements, they could be seen as a liability. The word entanglements hung in the air, a noose threatening to tighten around the fragile neck of our secret. Rachel's hand, hidden beneath the table, found mine, a brief squeeze conveying a world of meaning. The meeting continued, a blur of strategy and conjecture, but the real battle was waged in the silence between Rachel and me. As the room emptied, we lingered, the weight of our choices a tangible presence. Rachel, we need to decide what to do, I said, my voice low. If they find out, she cut me off, her eyes fierce. Let them find out, Trent. We've done nothing to jeopardize this company. Our relationship is not the issue here. But it could be used against us, against the company, I countered, the strategist in me warring with the man who had come to care for the woman before me more than he'd thought possible. Rachel stood, her stature commanding even in the empty room. Then we'll face it, together. We're not just a fling, Trent. What we have, it's real, and I won't let fear dictate my actions in business or otherwise. Her words were a clarion call, a call to arms that rallied the heart and silenced the clamor of doubt. I rose to meet her, our fortitude intertwining like the roots of an ancient tree. We'll stand united then. In the boardroom and beyond, I affirmed, my decision made. Our loyalties, though tested, would not waver. We were two halves of a whole, a force to be reckoned with. And as we left the room, our steps in harmony, I knew that the crossroads we faced was not just about the heart or duty. It was about the courage to embrace both, and in doing so, to forge a path that was true to who we were, together. Chapter 10. colliding worlds. We're hemorrhaging capital at an alarming rate, I stated, the spreadsheet before me, a grim map of our journey to the edge. If we don't act now, there won't be a company to save. Rachel stopped pacing, her hands clasped behind her back. I know, Trent, but we can't let our personal lives interfere with whatever measures we take. It's not just about us. Her voice was steady, but the slight tremor that underlaid her words betrayed the storm beneath her calm exterior. I rose to my feet, closing the distance between us, keenly aware that each step was weighted with consequence. Rachel, are you suggesting what I think you are? The inquiry left my lips, a bridge to a conversation I never envisioned having. She turned, her eyes meeting mine, the willpower within them as unwavering as the walls of this fortress of commerce. Yes, we need to end this. Whatever it is between us, it's the only way to ensure that our judgment isn't clouded. The sterile air seemed to grow colder, a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature settings. So this is it then? We just pretend that nothing happened? My voice echoed, hollow in the cavernous room. It's not about pretending. It's about prioritizing, she corrected me, her tone firm yet devoid of the warmth I had grown accustomed to. This company, the livelihood of our team, that has to come first. I nodded, the logic in her words a bitter pill that I swallowed with difficulty. All right, if that's what you think is best. The agreement was formal, a contract sealing the fate of an affair never fully allowed to bloom. Rachel's posture relaxed, a subtle release of tension that suggested relief or perhaps resignation. Thank you, Trent, for understanding. Understanding was a misnomer. What I felt was a maelstrom of conflict, the professional necessity warring with a personal loss that seemed to erode the very foundations of my resolve. We stood there, two statues in a temple of commerce, our personal world colliding with the reality of the crisis that enveloped our company. The connection that once drew us together was now the force driving us apart, a paradox as cruel as it was necessary. As Rachel left the room, her steps measured and purposeful, I was left to contemplate the crossroads at which we stood. The company we cherished and the love that had sparked in its shadows were now on divergent paths, and we, the unwilling architects of their separation, bore the weight of that decision in silence. The world outside continued its indifferent march, a reminder that the universe cared little for the affairs of two hearts amidst the vast machinery of industry. Our story, a tapestry of ambition and affection, was fraying at the edges, the pattern obscured by the hands that once wove it with care. In the solitude of the conference room, I faced the reality that the future of our company and the fate of our relationship were not just intertwined, but tragically at odds. And in that moment, the indifference I had to muster was the most profound act of courage I had ever been called to perform. Chapter 11, Revelations and Resolve. My oldest friend and confidant Mark sauntered in, his presence a familiar comfort. He took one look at my face and knew. You're thinking about her again, aren't you? Mark leaned against my desk, the question rhetorical. I sighed, rubbing my temples as I leaned back in my chair. Is it that obvious? As the nose on your face, Trent, he said, chuckling softly. You've got it bad for Rachel, and this whole noble sacrifice act is eating you alive. I couldn't deny it. The decision to distance ourselves for the sake of the company had seemed like the right choice, but now it felt like a self-imposed exile from my own happiness. It's complicated, Mark. You know the stakes, I replied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Mark pushed off from the desk and paced the room, his hands gesturing as he spoke. Life's complicated, my friend, but you've never been one to fold under pressure. Why start now? The question hung in the air, a challenge to my resolve. Mark had a way of cutting through the noise, forcing me to confront the truths I'd rather keep buried. Because this time, it's not just my career on the line, it's Rachel's too. And the fallout could be, I don't know if we could recover from it. Mark stopped pacing and turned to face me, his expression earnest. Then, you need to decide what's more important, playing it safe or going after what you really want. Meanwhile, Rachel found herself at a quaint coffee shop, tucked away from the prying eyes of the world. Her friend, Jenna, sat across from her, her intuition sharp as ever. You've been distracted lately, Jenna observed, stirring her coffee idly. Ever since the retreat, you've been off. Is it Trent? Rachel looked up, her guard momentarily slipping. Am I that transparent? Jenna reached out, covering Rachel's hand with her own, only to someone who knows you as well as I do. You're in love with him, aren't you? The question was a key turning in a long locked door, releasing words and emotions Rachel had caged away. I am, she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. But love isn't always enough. There are consequences, Jenna. To us, to the company. Jenna squeezed her hand, a silent pillar of support. Yes, there are consequences to every choice we make, but sometimes the greatest risk lies in not taking one at all. The wisdom in Jenna's words resonated with Rachel, a melody that harmonized with the silent song in her own heart. Back in the office, the night had deepened, the city lights a constellation of life outside my window. Mark's words echoed in my mind, a call to arms against the fears and insecurities that had held me captive. Maybe you're right, I admitted, a newfound determination rising within me. Maybe it's time to stop hiding from what I feel. Mark nodded, a knowing smile on his lips. That's the Trent Harper I know. Don't let fear dictate your life. The revelations of the night, shared in confidence with trusted friends, had paved the way to self-discovery for both Rachel and me. As I locked up the office, ready to head home, the weight of my willpower felt lighter. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear. It was time to confront the depth of my feelings and the possibility of a future with Rachel, whatever it might hold. Chapter 12, The Merging of Paths. Rachel entered, her presence as commanding as ever. She crossed the room with purposeful strides, her jet-black hair a sharp division to the pale hues of twilight. The atmosphere between us crackled with an intensity that belied our recent professional distance. Trent, she began, her voice firm, we've been given one last shot to present our case to the board. We need an angle, something they haven't seen. I turned to face her, the fading light casting her in a silhouette that softened the hard lines of ambition in her features. I've been working on something, Rachel. It's a risk, but if it pays off, it could be the lifeline we need. Interest piqued, she leaned against the conference table, her gaze never leaving mine. Tell me. I laid out the plans, a bold strategy that merged cutting-edge technology with a market gap we had previously overlooked. As I spoke, Rachel's eyes lit up, the cogs in her sharp mind turning. This could work, she breathed, the hint of excitement in her tone, a rare slip in her usual cool veneer. But we need to combine our strengths to sell it. They have to believe we are united in this. The prospect of working side by side with Rachel again sent an unexpected thrill through me. Our professional rapport had always been electric, but now there was something more profound at play. As we pored over data and projections, the hours melted away, bringing the impending meeting into sharp focus. It was in the midst of this fervor that our eyes met, and something unspoken passed between us. A realization that our connection ran deeper than shared ambition. The boardroom was a battleground of intellect and influence, and as we presented our unified vision, I felt Rachel's conviction in every word. Her passion, once a challenge, now bolstered my own, our synergy undeniable to those who watched. When the final slide flickered onto the screen, a hush fell over the room. The board members exchanged glances, the air ripe with contemplation. We had laid our cards on the table, our careers and hearts intertwined with the fate of our brainchild. As the board filed out to deliberate, Rachel turned to me, her hazel eyes reflecting the room's tension. No matter what happens, I needed you to know. I love you, Trent. I tried to fight it, but some forces are too powerful to resist. The confession hung in the air, a fragile truth that I had longed to hear. I love you too, Rachel. More than the thrill of victory, more than any professional accolade, you are the gravity that keeps me grounded. In that moment, the corporate crisis that had forced us back together paled in comparison to the honesty of our shared disposition. Our united front had indeed won over the board, but more importantly, it had rekindled the flame that had never truly extinguished between us. The merging of paths, I mused aloud, the words a fitting summary of our journey, two forces of nature that had collided, fought, and finally aligned to create something stronger than either could have achieved alone. And as we awaited the board's verdict, I knew that whatever the outcome, Rachel and I would face it together, our love the lantern guiding us through the storms yet to come. Chapter 13, Love's Triumph. Trent, have you seen the latest figures? We're not just back in the game. We're leading the pack, she said, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of pride and something else, a fierce joy that only victory can bring. I glanced at the reports, the numbers a sweet chorus to my analytical mind. I saw them, Rachel. We did it, didn't we? We pulled it from the brink. She squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement of our shared toil. We did, but you do realize what comes next, don't you? The question hung between us, laden with implications. We had crafted a phoenix from the ashes, but now we faced a different kind of scrutiny, the watchful eyes of our colleagues, who whispered behind raised hands and threw furtive glances our way. It's not just about the numbers anymore. It's us, Trent. They're all wondering about us, Rachel continued, her voice steady despite the undercurrents swirling around us. I nodded, knowing full well that our once hidden romance had now become the subject of office lore. Let them wonder. We have nothing to hide anymore. Our love is not a weakness, it's our greatest strength. The words resonated in the space between us, a declaration of intent that needed no further affirmation. Yet, as the murmurs grew louder, I felt the pull of an indomitable will, a desire to set the record straight, not just for us, but for everyone who had ever doubted. Then let's give them something to talk about, I said, a surge of boldness taking hold. Turning to face the room, I raised my voice, commanding attention. Can I have everyone's attention, please? The room fell silent, all eyes on us. I felt Rachel's grip tighten, a silent source of courage as I continued. I know there's been a lot of speculation, and I won't mince words. Rachel and I are together. Our relationship has been a private matter, but given recent events, we feel it's best to be transparent. A collective inhalation filled the room, a tangible response to the revelation. Yet it was Rachel's voice that cut through the silence, her words a clarion call that matched my own. Trent is right. We've worked side by side, not just to save this company, but because we believe in what we have together. Our commitment to each other is as solid as our commitment to our work. You've seen what we can achieve together, professionally. Personally, it's no different. The affirmation hung in the air, an instrument to our partnership in both arenas of our lives. The room erupted into applause, a chorus of support that washed over us like a wave. Colleagues came forward, their congratulations now tinged with a newfound respect. As the evening waned, the office lights casting a soft glow on the scene of our triumph, I realized that love's greatest victory was not just in surviving the storm, but in the willingness to stand in its eye and declare its power. Rachel and I had charted a course through uncharted waters, our love the compass that guided us home. Now, with the public declaration of our commitment, we had solidified a bond that adversity had only served to strengthen. Love, it seemed, had not just triumphed over the trials we faced, it had become the landmark that would lead us into the future. Chapter 14, Leap of Faith. She adjusted the collar of her crisp white blouse, a subtle prelude to the day's agenda. We need to be clear about how we're going to navigate this, she said, her voice echoing slightly off the glass walls. I nodded, folding my arms as I leaned back against the cool oak of the conference table. Agreed. Above all, we can't let our personal lives interfere with our leadership. It wouldn't be fair to the team. Her eyes, a complex tapestry of hazel, met mine with a spark of determination. Then let's lay down some ground rules. For starters, no more private meetings behind closed doors. Everything in the open, everything on record. The suggestion was sound, a fortification against any potential gossip or speculation. We'll also need to ensure we're never alone in making decisions that affect the company. A third party present at all times for transparency, I added, building on her foundation. The conversation shifted as we discussed how to approach the leadership team with our situation. Rachel's fingers drummed a steady rhythm on the tabletop, the only outward sign of her internal calculus. When we talk to them, we'll lay it all out, our commitment to the company, our strategies for its growth, and how we intend to manage our relationship without it affecting our work, she outlined, the strategist in her coming to the fore. I found myself admiring her all over again, not just for her brilliance, but for her unwavering commitment to integrity. They'll have questions, concerns, I said, acknowledging the potential hurdles, but we'll address them head on. We owe them that much. The conversation was a dance of ideas and ideals, a covenant to the respect and professionalism that had brought us to this point. We were two halves of a whole, seeking balance between our personal desires and our responsibilities as leaders. As we concluded our discussion, Rachel reached across the table, her hand briefly covering mine in a gesture that was both a promise and a pact. "This is a leap of faith, Trent, but one I'm willing to take with you." Her touch withdrew, leaving a lingering warmth as we prepared to face the leadership team. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but with a plan in place and a bond that refused to break, we were ready to navigate the complexities of an office romance with grace. We left the boardroom side by side, a united front, as we walked towards the future. The leap we were about to take was one of trust in each other, in our love, and in the strength of the connection that had drawn us together against all odds. It was a leap that promised finality and growth, the next chapter in a tale of opposites that had not just attracted, but had become irrevocably entwined. Chapter 15, A Harmonious Balance. Our shared office, once a battleground of wills, had become an evidence to compromise and collaboration. Her desk was an organized chaos of innovation, mine an array of strategic forecasts. Together, they formed a landscape of ambition and affection. "Morning, Trent," Rachel greeted, her voice cutting through the quiet. She stood by the espresso machine, crafting a pair of lattes with an artist's precision. "Morning, Rachel," I replied, watching her pour the steamed milk with a swirl that mirrored the patterns in her eyes. "Did you see the latest engagement figures? They're up by 15% since last quarter." She brought the cups over, the rich aroma of coffee enveloping us. "I did. The new campaign's resonating with our audience. It's fresh, it's bold, it's us." We sipped our coffee, the bitter warmth a welcome anchor to the moment. "We've come a long way," I mused, "from adversaries to this." Rachel leaned against the edge of the table, her eyes scanning the horizon of the city beyond our window. It wasn't without its challenges, but we've managed to find a balance that many thought impossible. The scrutiny from our colleagues had been intense, a searing spotlight that scrutinized every decision, every interaction for signs of favoritism or failure. Yet we stood steadfast, our relationship a bulwark against the tides of doubt. "In spite of everything, we've thrived," I said, setting my cup down. "Our success at work has only made what we have stronger." Rachel nodded, a silent agreement. "It's about setting boundaries. At work, we're leaders, partners. Outside, we're just Trent and Rachel." The delineation was clear, a line drawn not in sand, but in the bedrock of our shared values and goals. "It's about knowing when to switch off the work persona and just be ourselves," I added, thinking of the quiet dinners and lazy weekends that had become our sanctuary. A knock on the door heralded the arrival of our team, their faces alight with the glow of shared purpose. As we launched into the day's agenda, Rachel and I moved with a synchronicity that spoke of our mutual respect and understanding. Later, as the city lights flickered on, signaling the end of another day at the forefront of industry, we stepped out into the cool evening air together. The scrutiny had lessened over time, our commitment to each other and to our roles within the company serving as proof of our ability to maintain a professional and personal equilibrium. As we walked, Rachel's hand found mine, a simple touch that carried the weight of all we had overcome. "You know, Trent, they say it's about the journey, not the destination." I squeezed her hand, the city's heartbeat pulsing beneath our feet. "Then let's make sure it's one worth remembering." In the balance between love and labor, we had found our own unique rhythm, a resonance that amplified our strengths and soothed our weaknesses. The path ahead was a tapestry woven from threads of challenge and triumph, but together, Rachel and I were poised to create a harmonious balance that was both our legacy and our future. Chapter 16, New Beginnings. Turning from the window, I watched her as she organized the documents on her desk, her movements precise and deliberate. The office was quiet, our colleagues having departed, leaving behind the echo of a day's hard work. "Rachel," I began, my voice steady despite the tempest of emotions within. "Today marked an end, but also a beginning. We've navigated through the storm, and now clear skies beckon." She looked up, her hazel eyes meeting mine, a silent question lingering within their depths. "Clear skies and uncharted territories," she replied, her tone even, a reflection of the calm that came from years of facing challenges head on. I walked over to her, the carpet muffling the sound of my steps as I closed the distance between us. Uncharted, yes, but not unnavigable, not with you by my side. She stood, a slight smile curving the corners of her mouth. You're speaking in riddles, Trent. What's on your mind? Taking a deep breath, I took her hands in mine, the familiarity of her touch both grounding and exhilarating. I've been thinking about us, about our future. We've been partners in business, a force to be reckoned with, but I find myself wanting more. Rachel's gaze didn't waver, her poise unshaken by the gravity of the conversation. More? She echoed, her voice a whisper of curiosity. I nodded, the next words feeling like a leap into the abyss, yet one I was ready to take. Yes, more. A partnership beyond these walls, beyond balance sheets and board meetings. Rachel, I want us to embark on life's journey together, as more than just colleagues. I'm talking about a merger of hearts, a shared life. The office, with its towering shelves of books and the soft glow of desk lamps, became a backdrop to the most significant negotiation of my life. Rachel's eyes searched mine, the silence stretching between us like the pause before a symphony's crescendo. Trent, she said at last, her voice imbued with a warmth that spread through my chest. I've never been one to shy away from risk, especially when the potential reward is incalculable. I could hear my heart pounding, a rhythmic testament to the stakes at play. Are you saying I'm saying yes, she interjected, the smile now fully blooming on her lips. Yes to new beginnings, yes to a future together, both in love and in life. The words enveloped us, a cocoon of promise and potential. I stepped forward, my intentions clear in the space that no longer separated us. Then, Rachel Stone, will you? Yes, Trent Harper, she answered before I could finish, her laughter mingling with my own, a melody of joy in the quiet office. We stood there, entwined, as the last light of day gave way to the soft luminescence of the city at night. The proposal, untraditional yet fitting for two souls who'd always defied convention, was the merging of our paths, a proof to the unity we found in our differences. The office, once a battleground of wills, was now a sanctuary of our love, a love that had weathered storms and emerged not just intact but stronger. As we looked out at the cityscape, the future stretched before us, vast and inviting. It was a future we would shape together, a proof to the finality and growth of a romance that had begun as a tangle of opposites, but had blossomed into a beautiful, harmonious convergence. Chapter 17, Tangled in Your Gravity. Rachel's hand found its way into mine, her grip firm and assuring, a silent affirmation of the bond we had forged through fire and time. We had become more than partners. We were the architects of change, the embodiment of the belief that love, when coupled with determination, could indeed move mountains. Look at what we've built, Rachel, I said, my voice barely rising above the whisper of the evening breeze. Not just this structure of steel and glass, but the empire that thrives within it. She squeezed my hand, her smile reflecting the last vestiges of daylight. We've created something extraordinary, Trent. The innovations we've introduced, they're shaping the industry. We're not just riding the wave of change, we're the ones generating it. Our conversation was a quiet reflection of the journey that had brought us here. We had weathered storms of doubt and sailed through mists of uncertainty, only to emerge stronger, our sails billowing with the winds of success. We've inspired our teams to push beyond their limits, to see that their ideas have merit, that they can contribute to something grander than they ever imagined. I continued, pride swelling in my chest. Rachel turned to face me, the cityscape a canvas behind her. It's more than that, Trent. We've shown them that the line between personal and professional can be blended without compromising either. Our love is not a weakness, it's the cornerstone of our strength. The night deepened around us, the first stars daring to pierce the twilight veil. In the quietude, our past struggles seemed distant, specters of a time when our union was a fragile thing, threatened by the world and our own fears. And now, here we stand, unshakable, I said, my voice a mere murmur against the symphony of the city, tangled in the gravity of what we've built together. Our gazes locked, and in her eyes I saw the reflection of our shared soul, the unyielding force that had drawn us together against all odds. It's a gravity that holds us, Trent, that keeps us orbiting around a future we've yet to fully explore. Her words were a vow, a promise of continued exploration, of horizons that would forever beckon us forward. We had become a power couple, not merely in title, but in truth, our love a buoy that shone brightly, guiding others to follow the path we had blazed. The epilogue of our story was not an end but a beginning, a prologue to the countless chapters we would continue to write. Together, we were a force that conquered all obstacles, personal and professional, our lives a pledge to the enduring power of a love that refused to be categorized or constrained. As the night claimed its dominion, we stood, two figures entwined against the skyline, our hearts beating in unison, a harmony that resonated with the pulse of the city below. We were tangled in our gravity, an inexorable pull that anchored us to each other and propelled us towards the greatness we would pursue, side by side, for all our days. The final chapter has closed. We're delighted you spent this time with us on Tangled in Your Gravity. StoryWave.ai brings your prompts to life, creating stories that resonate. Don't forget to hit like, share with friends, and subscribe for daily doses of storytelling magic. March 2024. Until next time.